Hello.
Yeah, the mic stands are kind of like holding the cable in place, so I'm afraid to like touch anything at this point. All right, we're gonna get started. Welcome to the second annual Metasploit Townhall. Thanks to DerbyCon for letting us do this. It's our DerbyCon exclusive event. So the first question that might be on your mind are, who the fuck are these people that I'm looking at up here? So we're gonna just go ahead and start by introducing ourselves. I'm David Maloney, the like cosign. I am a senior security researcher at Rapid7 on the Metasploit team, and I have been working on Metasploit for about 7 years now, 5 of it getting paid by Rapid7, so that's a pretty good gig. Lance?
Hi, I'm Lance Sanchez. I've been working with Rapid7 for 4 years, and I'm the lead software engineer on the Metasploit team.
Hey, that's me. I am now the community manager. I also still do some development from time to time, but I spend most of my day on Twitter these days. I'm really good at Twitter, I think. Yeah. I've been working on Metasploit for about 9 years. I started submitting patches in 2007, got commit access in 2008, started with Rapid7 in 2009.
Yeah, look at that. You and your
What a handsome man.
No, I work in marketing now. So I used to be an engineer. Then I took a ROP chain to the knee or something. Yeah, I've been at Rapid7 for 6.5 years, commit on Metasploit for 7 years. I think we're at like a gradation of like number of commits, like on average, almost exactly. No? Like I have very few and Brent has quite a few. So that was the joke. All right. Anyway, going on.
Howdy. Hi, I'm Brent. No one really calls me Buster B, but that's why I am online. And so I've only been with Metasploit and Rapid7 for 2 years, but I'm actually the manager of the team. So yeah. Hi, everybody. It's very good to meet you and work with you. I see a lot of awesome, familiar faces out there, and gonna give some winks out. So hey, let's get going, man.
Okay, so we talked about who we are, but the faces of Metasploit itself are actually very numerous. The last time I looked, GitHub said we had about 363 actual contributors to the project, which is quite a few. So I went through and took a look at who the top 100 of our contributors were, at least the ones who actually had pictures on their GitHub accounts. So here's all the faces of the top 100 people who actually had a GitHub avatar, which we got a nice big wall of people here. But if we go ahead and we take out all the people who are or have been Rapid7 employees, we still have a lot of faces there. Metasploit has been and always will be driven by the community, by you guys sitting in the audience and anyone watching this on the live stream or watching the video afterwards. And so we can't do this without you guys. And that's basically the whole point of this event tonight, or today. It's not tonight, but is just for us to sit down and basically talk with you guys, our community, our users, our contributors, and the reason that we do this. This is where we're going to open it up to you guys here, but I want to just put down some ground rules first. No trolling. Seriously, there are going to be people who have serious questions and feedback, and as much as I enjoy a good troll, like, please don't waste their time. And also, we're not here to troubleshoot, so you know, we have a lot of resources available if you're having like a specific problem with you can't get some module to work or something like that. So there's a lot of avenues for that. And yeah, but do ask us any questions that are on your mind. Make suggestions. Tell us what you love. Tell us what you hate. Tell us what we suck at. I promise we won't get offended. And maybe just as importantly, tell us when somebody does something better than us and why you think they were better than us, because it's the only way we'll learn. And tell us what problems you guys have that we're not solving for you right now. So with that, open it up to the floor. Who wants to say something, ask something? Yeah, go ahead.
The question was about fuzzer modules and whether they're going to be enhanced and continued. We don't have any current plans for that. I think the reason they are primarily useful is because they're very targeted. So as opposed to some general fuzzer like Peach or something, they're very targeted. They already know how the protocol works. So the fact that we have other protocols that don't have any fuzzers associated with them means that there's definitely room for growth there, for improvement. But like I said, we don't have any direct plans for that. That would be a great place to get started contributing. And I hate to be the guy who says patch is accepted, but I say that all the time because patch is accepted. Adding something like that, I think, would be valuable to a lot of people. So if you're looking for a place to get started, there's a great suggestion.
Also, if there's like something specific you want to see a fuzzer for, you can always, hit us up on IRC, the community site, or even open a GitHub issue and say like, this is a thing that I need, and we'll take it under advisement. Yeah.
Ouch.
What are you running framework on? On Kali?
So we actually don't control packaging on Kali. So they decide when packages get pushed. And we've worked with them before, and we'll continue to work with them. We're trying to make it as stable as possible on that platform, because I know we have a whole lot of users there. So I'm sorry it's broke, but...
What version of Kali? Also, are you on the latest Kali rolling? Okay, because I thought that most of those issues had actually been resolved on Kali rolling. We did have some issues about a year or two ago with the way we were doing Kali packaging. And basically, we were trying to be too heavily involved, I think, in the process instead of just letting the Kali guys do their thing. And we sat down with them and talked about it and basically let them just control that process. And I think it's been a lot better since they just took over. So
definitely agree.
Well, that's good. I'm glad it's not all doom and gloom. That would be bad.
I would like to conduct a very unscientific poll of just show of hands who runs Metasploit as the Kali packaged binary from their sources. I know you do, dude. Okay. All right. So like, who does like a framework checkout like straight from GitHub? About equal. And anything. Who's never used Metasploit before and you're in the wrong room? Okay. All right, so about like 40, 20-ish, I guess, of this completely representative of the industry audience.
Actually, I'm curious. Does anyone use the packages that Rapid7 puts out, the open source packages? Crickets. Wow, interesting. Okay.
Nobody knows about them. Why don't you talk about them, Brent?
Maybe no one knows that actually Rapid7 builds Debian, RPM, OS X, and Windows packages of the open source, and they're updated every single day. Does anyone know that? No. Oh, well, very interesting. That's good. That's really good feedback here. They've been out for almost a year now. We've had at least a good beta run. So it sounds like maybe we need to promote that a lot more. Hey, yeah.
Would you encourage people running Kali to use the Debian packages?
To use the Rapid7 patches? Kali does a pretty good job. They have their own fork of Metasploit. If you go to their Git repos, you can find it. It gets updated whenever we tag it every Friday at noon. So they do a pretty good job. I would say, based on my observations from Kali users that reported bugs, we've had a couple of things that have come up. One of them is sometimes we'll make a change. Like, for instance, we made a change to how the version file was formatted. Kali ran a sed script on it as part of their packaging, and it changed MSF4 to MSF5 accidentally. So everyone's config files went to MSF5. It took us about a couple weeks to figure out what the hell went wrong, but we were able to fix that. Now, sometimes we break modules, and that's just kind of there's over 3,000 modules in Metasploit. There's something that's going to be someone's pride and joy, but doesn't get looked at by everybody. So sometimes that happens. We try to fix them as soon as possible. If you run the Rapid7 packaging edge, so there's a pro and a con. You get bug fixes right away, but you also you get the excitement of all that stuff. So yeah, I'd recommend it if you're running something Ubuntu, if you're running like Red Hat. If you're running Kali, I'd still kind of recommend you use Kali's packages, just because it integrates well with, say, their Armitage install, and integrates well with other tools because they have a specific location that they expect everything to be in. But we did work together. We made the database management tools the same between the two packages, so you don't have to learn a new way to do your database, some other things like that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and they even work with MSF
I'll go
Update
write a
on
blog
Windows
post.
and on OS X. So yeah. Yeah, it's an actual like .pkg file. It'll install Metasploit. It even has a GUI, so it's really sexy looking. We even followed like the marketing team's style guide for the right colors and everything. So
Sweet.
It is bona fide. So anyway, check it out. It's even open source, so you can improve the installer if you want. All right. Can I be completely honest real quick?
So the
No.
question was about basically our QE process and testing and automated testing. So I'll let Lance answer some of this.
So we do a lot of testing on the Pro product. There's minimal testing on the framework. We mostly make sure that unit tests pass, things like that go through. We have next to no exploit tests. They're hard to set up. It's something that I've been trying to get more time to work on, but it is painful to go through and verify that this exploit works every time. So it is on the roadmap, something we'd like to get done. I don't know when that's going to happen.
I'll talk a little bit about that. We've actually, one of the things that a lot of our test environments surrounded around is like Metasploitable 2, Windows XP, that kind of stuff. What we found is like that's not really relevant to anyone's real environment. You know, you guys probably figured that out 5 years ago, and it's like, yeah, I don't run into that many XP boxes these days. And if I do, that it's not, you know, as important as like making sure Windows 2012, 2008, Windows 10, all those kind of things continue to work with all the modules. So actually, we've been working on Metasploitable 3, which is going to be Windows and Linux based, and that's sort of going to be our test bed for future kind of unit tests and all that kind of stuff. And so it's got a lot of interesting new stuff in it.
We also have a lab environment in our office that has a whole variety of various platforms of every version of Windows back to 2000 SP4, a bunch of different Linux targets and things like that. And we try and do as much manual testing as we can, especially for things like the SMB login module that you mentioned. We try and test it in as many different scenarios as we possibly can. Unfortunately, sometimes we miss things. An example would be that we recently overhauled how we do SSH, and we didn't think about a couple scenarios that could happen where, like, if you did SSH over a proxy pivot, like, would this one piece still work? And so, you know, sometimes you get a little bit of egg on your face because you miss those scenarios. And also sometimes we just don't have the software anymore. Like, if you get some old exploit that requires a specific piece of software, sometimes it's really hard to find it again. Does that answer your question, or? This sounds like a question for the community manager.
Yeah, so some of that is, so the question was, how do we communicate the big architectural changes that are happening, like with the login scanners? A lot of that will show up on blog posts. I do a weekly wrap-up. I call it weekly, but it's actually about bi-weekly because I'm a slacker. So watch the blog posts. Occasionally I post things on Twitter too. The issues queue is going to be a flood of information, but all of that stuff shows up there. So if you're willing to wade through that, then everything will show up in the pull request queue at the very least. We're starting to look at ways of getting our development process more out in the open. We use our ticketing system internally because that's what the company uses, but it doesn't translate well to GitHub issues. So we're trying to come up with a good way to make that a little more open, a little more transparent. And we looked at Waffle.io. Did we look at anything else for that? I wrote some scripts. Okay. So yeah, we're trying. If you have a good suggestion on where that should be communicated or how best to do it, please let me know.
Tomorrow, Egypt here is giving a talk called "The New Shiny in Metasploit," so you might want to go to that one too because it will talk about the new shiny in Metasploit. And so just come to DerbyCon every year for the rest of your life, and you'll at least get 1 year fidelity.
And to reiterate a point that we'll probably hit a lot of times, testing, if that's an area that you have any interest or knowledge of, is another great place to get started contributing. Like, it might not seem as glamorous as writing like the next Heartbleed or Shell Shock or whatever. Yes, we all know about your opinions on Heartbleed. But my point is that it may not seem like as glamorous, but it's actually really, really important that we continue to find good ways of adding test coverage. And every commit pushed back to master on framework triggers a continuous integration build of all the unit tests. But as Lance was saying, like, functional testing is still something we're trying to get our head wrapped around how to do it in a reliable way, especially for things like SMB-based exploits. Like, something goes the least bit wrong, and that target ends up in a weird state, and then, like, you can't do anything with it till you reboot the machine. And so if that's an area you're interested in, I'd just also say that, you know, that's another place we'd happily take contributions from outside of Rapid7 for as well. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
There's a good talk by one of our Metasploit contributors coming up soon. You should definitely check it out. JDuck's talk, which is going to be about some Android exploitation. We have a lot of awesome stuff planned for Android. We also have been working on some native interpreters that can be injected into potentially iOS, into Linux, into BSD systems, into all sorts of a variety of systems. We've been doing some internal testing. We also have a public project that's been out for maybe 2 months or so. So I think we've got a lot of momentum around IoT. I've got a backpack stuffed full of IoT devices that I'm going to be hopefully demoing later on Sunday when we talk about some new payload stuff. So I think that's going to be a very important area for Metasploit moving forward, is basically doing a router embedded, that kind of exploitation, and sort of showing the weaknesses that we have within the ecosystem, within everything from printers to, you know, your baby monitors, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's going to be a big place that Metasploit's going to be going in the future. I think post-exploitation is probably going to become more and more important as we move forward, and basically improving the data model so people can keep track of all the crazy stuff that they find on the network. I think those are probably going to be more of where we focus, and not quite as much on remote, no access vulns and that sort of thing. I think exploitation is still very important, but it's somewhere there are lots of really easy ways to get into things as well. So I think that's kind of where we're going to see Metasploit going as we move forward.
Well, I think the stuff that Brent has been spearheading, was it Brent and OJ and Tim, right?
Tim Wright.
Yeah. Have been doing a lot of work in Android in particular over the last, year and a half, really.
Right.
That's all Project Metal.
Yeah, right.
And so search for Metasploit Metal, and you can read all about that. The interesting thing,
metal.
Yes. And yeah, metal, like this stuff. Anyway, the interesting thing about Android is Android today and iOS today, they're hard to exploit, unless your name is JDuck. But the fact is that a lot of the IoT stuff that you see that's running Android under the covers is super, super, super old Android that will never, ever get updated. So it's all Android 4.04 stuff, right? Or 4.4 is about the limit of what you're going to see.
I saw a treadmill that was running Android 4.2.
Perfect.
A treadmill.
So they'll have unpatched bugs forever. And so it's a target-rich environment out there for Android-powered devices that may not necessarily be handsets, but absolutely talk on your target's network.
I mean, I think the big thing with the traditional mobile landscape, and JDuck's probably going to be looking at me like you're an idiot here in a second, but I would say that it seems like the attack surface on a lot of the mobile, tablet and phones, just doesn't seem to be anywhere near as big as a traditional computer. I'm looking at JDuck to make sure he's not just you're completely out of your mind. Okay, JDuck disagrees, so I'm going to stop talking about it then, because go see JDuck's talk.
I'd also say integration is going to be a big part of Metasploit moving forward, integrating with other tools more closely. The thing is, Metasploit started out 10 years ago as kind of an omnibus of everything you could think of, everything from fuzzers to post-exploitation to exploitation to auxiliary modules to a zillion things under the sun. What we find is that these days that there are a lot of very targeted projects out there that do one thing and do one thing really well. And we basically are kind of thinking, why don't we identify the things that we kind of don't do so well and integrate with the thing that does it better. So when we're talking about, for instance, I'll make one suggestion. PowerShell there are some amazing frameworks out there. I would say PowerShell Empire is an incredible tool. A lot of us use it internally as well, and so we're looking at how can we better integrate with PowerShell Empire. So if people need to do PowerShell exploitation, why reinvent the wheel inside of Metasploit? Integrate better. And so when we're thinking about adding new features, we think, well, is there someone who's done it really well already? And how can we leverage that and make it so that people kind of have a one-stop shop and they can integrate with the tools they like and still use Metasploit for the places where it fits in and does things really well.
Anyone else? JDuck.
Yes? Sometimes module deprecations happen when we've added a module in one place, and then we moved it to another place. So we end up with two modules that basically do the exact same thing. So we usually try not to break people's workflow by moving a module and deleting the old one, but they got RC scripts, whatever, hard-coded to that. Sometimes we'll see module consolidation, where one module does three things really well, and then there's a whole bunch of little modules that do one thing kind of half well, and that's where some of those other deprecations come from. I think they're usually for the best. And again, it kind of reduces the number of halfway modules that are in the ecosystem.
Yeah. So one of the recent examples was the old LSA secrets module that when we started looking at it, it turned out under at least certain circumstances, it just plain didn't work. And now we have Mimikatz integration, so it made no sense for us to have this module that we had written and to keep it here just because it was built here when we had integration with a tool that was custom built for this purpose, kind of to what Brent was saying a minute ago.
And was better at it.
And yeah, it was better at it. So like, rather than being like, well, we made this thing, so it's great, we're like, all right, this thing, it's a little broken, it's old. Let's just use Mimikatz. Let's just do the things that make sense. I don't think, like, we like to talk about how we continue to grow, and we like to use like module numbers to talk about that, but I don't think there's like a hard focus on just driving that number up. It's about what makes sense and what's relevant. And we've always had sort of this weird dichotomy of, we have stuff in Metasploit that is like old NT4 based exploits and things that we're like, we have no way of testing this really, or like knowing for sure if we ever break it, like how do we even know? And so there's this weird line that we're trying to figure out how to walk of not taking away things that people might still find useful, because NT4 systems are definitely out there, but not have to try and like actively maintain stuff that is essentially impossible for us to maintain.
No, you covered it.
All right. Yeah. Cricket. Bueller. Brandon Perry. More spinners. Okay.
Like multiple lines of spinners?
Patches accepted.
Some fireworks?
I will add a command line argument for you that will just fill the screen with spinners. Well, it'll be the -B Perry option.
So the question was about my talk on the new shiny. Is it going to be new shiny that exists or new shiny that's coming? It all exists. I'm only talking about things that are on master today.
My follow-up would be like, what are some of the high-level features you guys are considering?
Yeah. So the follow-up question was about like what some of our plans for the future are, and I'm going to jump in here real quick. I know some of the other guys can add some stuff. But one of the big things we're actually focusing on right now is sort of a major architectural overhaul. We've spent a bunch of time this year upgrading Ruby and Rails and all the back-end dependencies, but now we're focusing on like breaking our code up. If you've been watching, like a lot of the Rex libraries are getting broken up into individual Ruby gems and being given their own individual testing, like their own unit tests so that they run independently. And we're looking in the long term to start breaking Metasploit up into more component pieces that interoperate with each other instead of this giant monolithic entity that is a massive download. Every time you update it, it's huge. Everything has to load every time you start it up. And so, conceptually, I always thought of Metasploit framework as a toolbox. And I feel like what we've created instead over time organically has become like more of a Swiss Army knife, where it's all the tools in one, but you have to carry the whole thing with you, and each tool might not be the best tool for the job. And I want to see us move back towards being a toolbox with the right tools all available there. And you can download it all together, but then you only need to grab the tool that you need for that particular time. You looked like you had something you wanted to add to that.
Yes, all of that. Also, we're kind of in the background working on protocol supports for SMB2. That's been in the background. It's been in the works for a long time because it's a big, massive protocol, and we had to put that on a back burner for a while. I'm hoping to pick that back up soon. I would love some help if any of you are interested in hacking packets. SMB2 is a ridiculous protocol.
Less ridiculous than SMB1, though.
Yes, considerably less ridiculous. SMB1 is mind-blowing. It's completely insane. SMB2 is just weird. It's better, but yeah. So yeah, working forward on new protocol support is a big thing.
Integrations with other tools too, I think is going to be a major focus. We've talked about it a lot for years, but I think this year in particular, it's going to be a big thing. Like PowerShell Empire was mentioned, but I mean, we've always had our integrations with Nmap and John the Ripper, for example. But like we're going to be working on making those probably better and looking at other tools like. Brandon Perry over here wrote a plugin at one point for SQL map integration. I'd like to see that. Oh yeah. I'd like to see that like get improved and get some love and be made more of a first class thing. As Brent said, like this idea that we have to build everything ourselves just isn't feasible for the amount of time and resources that we have. And I'd really like to see our community of various people who make InfoSec and hacking tools work together more tightly and closely. And so that's one of the big things I hope for over the next year.
I think as far as a community, I think I've seen Metasploit take a shift as well. I see some really amazing new contributors that have sort of taken over. It's like almost like a new generation of Metasploit hackers. And I know Metasploit sort of had some shifts where you had like all these guys that were really active 5 years ago, and these days they're not as active. And something that makes me really excited is we're having a whole new generation of people that are just discovering Metasploit for the first time, writing their first modules. And what we're basically, I think is really cool is that we're kind of incubating a whole new set of people who are kind of shaping Metasploit in a different way than maybe it would have been built like 4 or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago or something like that. So as we move forward, I think one of the most exciting things for me about Metasploit is just welcoming all the new community members, all the new people who have contributed this year. It kind of blows my mind, all the new guys. We'll talk a little bit about it at Egypt's New Shiny talk as well. But yeah, I think that's pretty much the thing that really gets me going about Metasploit.
Anybody else?
So the question was about integration with Nexpose, which is Rapid7's vulnerability scanner. So Metasploit framework in of itself can import data from pretty much every vuln scanner I know about from a network vuln scanner standpoint. We do have integrations with Nexpose, specifically, of course, because it's our in-house product, and some of that is built into our commercial offerings to be a little more in-depth, but from the open source standpoint, we want you to be able to pull in data, and the Rapid7 marketing people are probably going to hate me for saying this, but from any other product, whether it's another company's commercial product or ours, I don't feel like it's appropriate for the open source part of Metasploit to favor Nexpose over anything else. Like, whatever tools you need to get your job done, that's what we should strive to integrate with.
Yeah,
so,
we've actually done some work this year to integrate with the actual official Nexpose client gem as well. So that's going to actually improve our import performance considerably once we get that pushed in. Something else is we've actually been getting updates from like Nessus and from OpenVAS and the guys who work on those projects, and they've been upping their integration stuff as well. So it's pretty exciting. I see everything just becoming tighter in the future.
Yeah, it would be, if it weren't impossible, it would also be suicidal for Metasploit to like favor Nexpose over anything else, right? We absolutely should be doing that and work well with Nexpose because we like know those guys and they're like right over there, you know, conceptually. But Metasploit is, like, a lot of places talk about how they support open source and they have this open source project, and you'll see a lot of open source projects out there that have 1 to 4 contributors. You know, Metasploit is unique in that we do have hundreds. We have at least 200 that don't work at Rapid7 and never have. And so that's if there would be a revolt, you know. Like I know JDoc ran his own fork of Metasploit for 2 or 3 years because he hated the way we loaded everything. And then we fixed it, and now I don't think he supports it anymore. So that's good. And so So yeah, like if you have like a vulnerability scanner you like, or like, you know, web application scanner you like, or something else, something that's a little more active, like a firewall manager system or like web application firewall, something like that, that you want to work with Metasploit with. I know that first off, you know, we can't stop you from doing that integration work, and secondly, we will help you do it because Rapid7 is very serious about our commitment to open source. We make cool T-shirts and hire people from the open source community and all that. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, I mean, we're really into that, and it's a really unique project to be involved in, not just because it's so friendly and we all hold hands and sing Kumbaya when we are popping boxes, but because it is so active externally. It's not just like coding with the windows open. It's we do collaborate. So.
Yeah. So I mean, what you see a lot of times with the commercial open source companies like that have an open source offering and then their commercial offering on top of it, which is sort of the model that Metasploit has had for the past however many years since the acquisition, 7 years or so. A lot of times those companies will say, oh yeah, we have this open source thing, but they don't really support it that much and they don't really care about it. They just use it as a driver to drive people to their commercial offering. I have many times had conversations with people at the very top of our products organization at Rapid7 who I basically say, what do you see as the role of Metasploit framework of our open source side? And what they all inevitably say is that it drives everything we do in Metasploit, that the framework and the open source community is the most important thing, and that they are dedicated to protecting and cherishing that part of what we do. So it's a very unique environment, I think, at Rapid7 in terms of how we support that.
And if they didn't think that way, I wouldn't still be here.
Yeah, truth.
Did we answer your question?
Jeff Jarmark.
Yeah.
So the question was about a Metasploit module that attacks Metasploit, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to be a little more specific because there was more than one.
Yeah, just recently.
Why
So
don't you tell us about that,
update
Dave?
Metasploit, please.
A little bit of both.
Both. So we are both like, oh shit, like we screwed something up, and oh cool, hey, this will be funny. We're gonna have a Metasploit module that'll attack Metasploit, and we've had those before too. There's in the
one.
brute forcers, there's a Metasploit RPC brute forcer that somebody wrote. I mean,
Script Junkie wrote a whole bunch of directory traversals from a malicious Meterpreter server. That one was awesome. Where if Metasploit connected to a malicious Meterpreter session, it could do path traversals and drop files in your like .msf4 directory. So it was code execution from msfconsole.rc, and I love that stuff. I think it's hilarious.
I mean, we'd be giant hypocrites if we didn't embrace that, I think, right? Like, a big part of what we do is the idea of sharing the information about these vulnerabilities and exploits to make security better for everyone and increase awareness and allow people to test. So if we didn't do that for our own products, we'd just be a bunch of hypocrites.
Right. Plus, that shit's funny.
I will note that we actually went from disclosure to us to fixes and release in less than a week. So we don't hold on to things, and there's really no point to it.
Yeah, man, we should have taken the 60 days.
What's that?
We should have taken the 60 days.
Oh, I know. You know, we worry about the users too. You know, that kind of thing. So the one person can find it, anyone can find it. I mean, right. I mean, not necessarily, but yeah, you get it.
So as a handler of some recent Metasploit bugs, like I feel their pain. We do get bugs occasionally, and we report bugs a lot more often in other people's stuff. And so the question was, like, how is our relationship with vendors when we publish exploits? It's good. It's better than it has been ever. We haven't had really anything in the way of like any sort of chilling effects on kind of the normal day-to-day on disclosure. Despite the fact that we have we do have a company behind us, Rapid7, and Rapid7 has a growing customer base, and we're running into more and more often customers that the researcher didn't know that they were a Rapid7 customer. It could be like an external person who doesn't work at Rapid7. We have researchers inside Rapid7 who don't have magical access to our entire customer and prospect lists. And so when those things come up, we do take a pretty hard editorial style line on that, where we don't hold back just because someone is a customer of Rapid7. It's helpful on disclosure because we know who to call because they pay us money, and so we could just talk to their account manager and say like, hey, we have a bug on your stuff. Sorry, we're going to publish a Metasploit module. Would you like to continue giving us money? So that conversation is a little bit. It's usually like our own salespeople who freak out over that kind of thing because it's their paycheck. But for vendors in general, I'd say that we do enjoy a pretty decent relationship by and large. Like I handle all of the outbound vulnerability disclosure stuff. So my job is to, approach people and say like, hey, I'm really sorry to be the one to tell you this, but you have a bug, right? And so we try to be friendly about it. We try to be front with the kinds of timelines that we expect out of people, so they at least have a notion. Interestingly enough, Brandon Perry, no one gave us any sort of timelines or notions on when they were going to publish their own published vulnerabilities or anything like that. When they You reported a bug. Yeah. It's very helpful when you report bugs to other people to be very explicit on what you plan to do afterwards. And it's harder to be explicit when you're in a bar, I guess, and not writing things down.
But thank you very much. That was a good find.
Yeah. So we try to make sure that like the people that we work with, we actually are working with them. We're not just shaming them. We're not just saying like, oh, your software is dumb and you should feel bad about it. We try to make sure that not only are we reporting vulnerabilities when we get sweet, tasty Metasploit modules out of them, but like fixes are reasonable and mitigations are reasonable, and they're not. And the mitigations actually work, and they're not just like caught on their back foot when we release Metasploit modules. They have some kind of notion of how they're going to respond to it, and generally it's been okay. I still occasionally get like nasty grams on like attorney letterhead, but it's not. Nothing has really come up, I guess, in about 8 or 9 months lately. Are we out of time?
We are. So. This went by really fast. Thanks everybody for coming. All of us will still be here.
We'll be around all weekend.
What?
We'll be here all weekend.
Yeah, we'll be here all weekend. So if you have other things you want to ask or talk about, just come find us around the con and come talk to us. But yeah, thanks for showing up, guys.
And feel free to hit us up on Twitter or email or whatever.